Thank you very much, and good morning. And thank you for having me here this morning. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I look forward to presenting one of my favorite subjects, and it is being meek, or meekness. The basis for my talk this morning comes from the Gospels according to Spiritism and is typically based on chapter 9 of the Gospel. And the first part of chapter 9 is an introduction to the Sermon on the Mount and comes from the New Testament, Matthew chapter 5. And it is the first time that Jesus has spoken to a large number of people. His presentation has become what many theologians and knowledgeable people say is the most important teaching of Jesus. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those that hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You'll notice that verse 5 and verse 9 are marked in yellow, and those two are the focus of our talk today. From chapter 9, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. What is a meek person? And I found this little writing from A.W. Tozer, who was a famous American minister and preacher in the 40s and the 50s here in America. It goes, in himself, nothing. In God, everything. The meek man is not a human mouse afflicted with a sense of his own inferiority. Rather, he may be in his moral life as bold as a lion and as strong as Samson. But he has stopped being fooled about himself. He has accepted God's estimate of his own life. He knows he is as weak and helpless as God has declared him to be. But paradoxically, he knows at the same time that in the sight of God, he is of more importance than angels. In himself, nothing. In God, everything. So chapter 9 begins exactly as you're seeing it. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Number 2, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. You have heard it said by them of old time that thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill will be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, that shall be in danger of the council, and whoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of the hellfire. The term Raca in biblical times was a very profane word. Picture the most profane word you can think of in your mind, and that is Raca. And also, the warning here is that we should never, ever call someone a fool. That puts us in danger. By these maxims, Jesus makes meekness, moderation, docility, affability, and patience the law. Consequently, condemning violence, anger, and all discourteous expressions towards others. But what did Jesus mean by the words, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, when he had recommended that mankind renounce all worldly goods after having promised those of heaven? Benevolence towards one's creatures, which is a result of loving your neighbor, manifests itself in the form of affability and mildness. Now, did Jesus mean that we should give up all of our worldly goods, our money, our property, and just become poor and meek? I don't think so. And on the other hand, meek has become known today of describing a person that is very controllable, very submissive to other people, unconfident, cowering. But that's not what meek means here. Meek is that person that is confident in themselves, that knows when he or she needs to exert herself, himself, and knows when to be humble in mind and in heart, and especially humble and humilified in our relationship with God. The Bible gives us two great models of meekness. Moses, of course, as the leader of the Jews, who led the Jews out of Egypt, who warned the Pharaoh of the 7 plagues, the parting of the Red Sea at God's hand, the 10 Commandments. And of course, our Lord Jesus, born of a virgin, father was a carpenter. As a boy, he actually taught in the synagogues of Bethlehem. Perhaps became the best known teacher in all the world. He performed many miracles. He was crucified for his beliefs and became visible to others after his death. In fact, the founder of the church, and beyond a shadow of a doubt, the most central figure in all of Christianity. We have a little recipe for meekness. How can we become meek? Well, we take 1 large container of gentleness. We add 1 large container of mildness. We add 1 large container of softness. And 1 large container of humility. And then we mix them all together and we try and be like Jesus. In the 1200s, Francis of Assisi was the son of a very wealthy silk merchant and one of the wealthiest families in the community that he was from, Assisi. By the way, his first name was not Francis. He was a John. His real name was Giovanni. When he became of age, he went to serve in the army of Assisi and was involved in battles and wars throughout Italy. When he came back from his service, he was a changed man. He went from being raised in money and wealth, having everything that a young man could have at that time, and gave all those things up to be in service of the underprivileged and the poor. He traveled throughout Italy, France, with no salary, no money, and he did it for years and years. And you'll see on the right-hand side a cloak that supposedly belonged to Francis of Assisi. He had no money to buy a new coat or a new cloak. When it became torn or ripped, he simply was able to sew and patch it up. Many became followers of Francis because of his teachings. He was really the first to profess that we should try and live the examples of Christ's teachings and to be humble and meek. Jorge de Bonaventura. That's not his picture. That's the picture of Francis, Pope Francis, whose real name was Jorge from Argentina, who rose in the ranks from a humble parish in Buenos Aires to become a bishop, and by a miracle became elected as Pope. And one of the things that's become most admired about Francis is his foregoing of all those beautiful things that the Pope has, lives, wears, a beautiful robe, the fancy hat, the red shoes. He gave all that up. He didn't want that. He lives in a very small apartment in the Vatican. And even when he was a parish priest and a bishop, he never owned an automobile. He took a taxi wherever he needed to go. This might be a man that few of you have ever heard of, Booker T. Washington, who was a teacher, an educator, and he became the leader and the president of the Tuskegee Institute, one of the most famous black universities in America. Very, very responsible for the success and growth of the Tuskegee Institute. He liked to go out for walks over his lunch hour, and one day he's walking through one of the neighborhoods close to Tuskegee. A wealthy woman saw him walking by and said, "Would you mind helping me carry in the logs here by the road into the house?" Booker Washington, without question, started taking the logs one by one into the lady's house until they were all inside. Without saying a word, he left and went back to his office at the Institute. Later in the afternoon, the lady's neighbor came to her, and said, "Ma'am, why did you have the president of Tuskegee Institute taking logs into your house?" The woman had no idea. She immediately got dressed in her nicest clothes, went down to the Tuskegee Institute, tried to find the office of Booker T. Washington, which she did, went to Dr. Washington's secretary and asked if she could see him. The secretary announced that she was there. Dr. Washington invited her into the office. She said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I had no idea who you were." He said to her, "You're welcome, ma'am. I'm glad I could help you." The second part. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. If you remember number 2 from chapter 9 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. This might be a word that you've never heard of. Agape. A-G-A-P-E. We all understand the love that we have for our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, that known as familia love. And we also know about the love that we have for that loving partner, our spouses, our girlfriends, our boyfriends, that being romantic love. And the special kind of love that we have for our children, which is different from any of those two. We have a special love for our children, don't we? Well, agape is a love that is an international and unconditional love for all of mankind. And I think I'm of the opinion that agape is a requirement for those that become real peacemakers. I challenge you. Who said this? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Anybody know? Paul. Very good. Very good. Corinthians 3. Very good. I put on the display here some of the famous peacemakers of my age, maybe not of yours, but in the Mahatma Gandhi from India, Nelson Mandela from South Africa, Henry Kissinger, which you younger people won't know who is, but he brokered the peace agreement between the United States and Vietnam. I was a Vietnam era veteran, so I'm well aware of Dr. Kissinger's. Martin Luther King, who just recently celebrated his honor this week on Martin Luther King Day. Underneath him, the Dalai Lama, who has had many peacemaking efforts, especially with China. In the bottom left-hand corner in the circle, a famous Methodist minister by the name of Albert Schweitzer, who was a minister and missionary and spent almost his entire life in Africa ministering to the African people and was very influential in bringing peace amongst varying tribes. I want to spend a little time sharing with you a photo that you probably don't recognize. His name is Oscar Arias. He is from Costa Rica, and he became president of Costa Rica. Now, those of us that have traveled substantially in Central America, Latin America, and South America know that Costa Rica has a reputation of being a very peaceful country. Not much conflict there. Well, one of the reasons is because President Arias started in the schools of Costa Rica a program of teaching young kindergarten and first graders the principles of peace, the benefits of peace, and the contribution that peace can make to the world. And there are those that say it is because of President Arias' program of teaching peace to young children that has influenced Costa Rica enjoying that wonderful reputation of being a peaceful country. And just as a sidebar note by me, what a wonderful example that is for every other country to teach peace. I put a quote here by Mother Teresa. I think almost all of us know a little bit about her and all the things that she did in Eastern Europe. But one of her statements that she made was, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. And a quote from Dr. Schweitzer down in the corner, until he extends his circle of compassion to include all living things, man will not himself find peace. Now, I've shown you some of the famous peacemakers that we have had in my lifetime and maybe yours. But I want to share with us some of the not so famous peacemakers. You. Yes, you. How many times in your life have you had the opportunity to be a peacemaker? I remember some battles between my children, which I had to become a peacemaker with a little bit of force. How about your next door neighbor? How about a relative, a cousin, an uncle, a niece, a nephew, or a complete stranger? Opportunities are presented to us as we travel along the road of our lives. Will you be ready to be a peacemaker when needed?
Thank you.